Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to play Regi's Pikachu. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. First, I'm going to go a little more in depth into the list than normal. Then we're going to play a couple games, and after that, I'm going to go into the sequencing with the deck and give a couple example hands and stuff like that, and then give my overall thoughts on the deck at the end. Also, during the games, I'm going to try to focus a lot more on the kind of prize mapping strategy, my overall thoughts, and like why I play the hands out in the way that I do. So let me know what you guys think of this kind of video in the comments below. First, the whole idea behind this deck is that we have the Regigigas here that says if we have all the other Regis in play, we can attach 3 energy from our discard pile to one of our Pokemon. Now this is an insane ability, but they balanced it by kind of making it so it could only go to Regis, but now that we have the Area 0 Stadium, we can use this energy acceleration to any Pokemon. Area 0 of course lets us have 8 bench Pokemon in play if we have a Terra Pokemon. Our Terra Pokemon of choice is the Pikachu EX. It has the sturdy kind of ability where if it were to be knocked out by damage and it had full HP, it is now 10 HP instead, and an attack for Grass Lightning Metal that does 300 and we discard 3 energy from this Pokemon. Another card that is pretty important to the strategy of the deck and makes it so we can build it the way that we can with the Cipher engine is the Precious Trolley. It of course says we can just get any amount of basic Pokemon from our deck that we want and put them onto our bench, so we can get up to 7 Pokemon if we have a Pikachu on the bench and a Area 0 in play. We also have Greninja in here. It's nice for the card draw and getting energies in the discard pile, but it also has the insane Moonlight Shuriken attack, and Regi's is one of the few decks that can pretty easily string this attack turn after turn, and that can combo really well with Regieleki's second attack for Lightning Colorless that does 120 to one of our opponent's Pokemon, and we discard all the lightning energy attached to it. So if we use like Radiant Greninja, we can knock out an evolving basic and also hit a Rotom or a Pheasantipity, and then next turn target it down with the Regieleki attack to knock it out and take a pretty easy 3 prizes over 2 turns while ignoring the threat in the active, which is pretty nice because while Pikachu does big damage, we have no good way to one-shot the stage 2 EXs like Charizard, so often we're going to use Greninja to kind of sneak some damage in there. We have Iron Bundle. It just makes sense in a deck like this with the 4 stretchers. Most turns we need to play a draw supporter so we don't have too much gust, so we have the bundle to kind of make up for that. And this deck also doesn't need the highest amount of gust because we have so much bench control with the Greninja and the Eleki. Squawkabilly is pretty important in this deck for turn 1. Of course, on the first turn we can discard hand, draw 6. This also combos really well with Cipher, as well as Regidrago's ability that lets us draw until we have 4 cards in our hand. I thought the Ciphers were kind of weird when I first saw this deck the way it was built, but with the Regidrago, the Greninja, the Squawkabilly, and the Trekking Shoes, we have access to the cards off of Cipher pretty often, and we also want to be picking out single cards in our deck like the one of Luminous Energy. This seems like the Mist Energy should just be another Luminous, but with the Ciphers we are able to access that a lot more than I had originally thought. We have 2 Heavy Ball in here. We just really want to get Pokemon out of our prizes. There's a ton of basics in this deck. The odds are that one of them is going to be prized at least, and we would like to find the Heavy Ball to grab it out, especially when we need access to all of our Regis. Some other notable attacks are Regice's attack that does 100, and if our opponent's active is a Pokemon V, it can't attack next turn, and Registeel does 220 minus 50 for each energy in our opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. We cannot attack with Regirock in this deck, unfortunately. We don't have any fighting energy, but we can use all the other attackers. Regidrago just does 160, and Regigigas just does 150 plus 150 more if our opponent's active is a VMAX, but it's extremely rare that that will ever matter. But yeah, all in all, we just want to try to get all the Regis out and decide what attackers we're going to want to use. If we just want to attack with the Regis, we don't need to worry about getting down the Pikachu and stuff like that, but if like Greninja is going to be the attacker we want to use and all that, we have to get the Pikachu and the Stadium down. A lot of playing this deck tends to be like rebuilding your board. Your opponent bumps the Stadium, you have to know what Regis are prized, what you have access to know which ones to correctly get rid of. So that's definitely something important to be thinking about. And when thinning it with the deck like this, getting rid of Nest Balls and stuff like that to thin the deck often aren't the best way to go, because the cards we want to find at the end of the game tend to be Nest Balls and stuff like that just to find more Pokemon and refill our bench from whatever our opponent did on their last turn. But yeah, that is the deck. Let's get into the games. So we are up against Dragapult. I was picking to go first with this deck. I'm still not entirely sure about that because just with all the cards and the ways to draw combined with the Ciphers, I think this deck can pretty often get a turn 1 attack going second, so maybe that's something to think about. even though going first most of the time did feel pretty fine. This hand maybe would have been a lot better going second, because I could have like burned the 2 switch cards and ciphered for like Pikachu and Trolley and just gotten like Squawk and Greninja and stuff and drawn a bunch of cards and more than likely gotten an attack off. But now here I have to Ultra Ball to thin my hand down, and I'm going to kind of do the same thing where I'm going to cipher for the Trolley and I think a Vessel. And with Trolley and Vessel, I should be able to get a Greninja attack off and knock out both of the Dreepies. Like, often with this deck, I was finding that when you have a Cipher in your hand and like either Greninja or Drago and a way to draw a couple cards, there's usually some combination of cards that can get you to whatever attack that you want, which is pretty nice and pretty strong about the deck. Now I want to pull another Pokemon out, and they do have a Duskull on the bench, so I just decided to get another Regidrago. I don't know how ideal that is. I just figured I wanted to be guaranteed the draw of the Drago no matter what. So if they like bump my stadium or knock out my lone Drago with a Dusclops or something like that, and like Thornton knockout, I just want to be guaranteed to be able to promote a Drago and draw a couple cards next turn. I'm really hoping that they won't be able to attack me next turn, though. That's kind of the idea. I do attach the extra energy. That might seem like a little bit counterintuitive because now I don't have draw with Greninja next turn, but I also only am 1 energy away from a Greninja attack to keep focusing down their Dreepies. Because a lot of these stage 2 decks aren't playing Manaphy, so we can really take advantage of that with this deck. And yeah, they either have to bench Manaphy or multiple Dreepies or find a way to buy some time. Here I thought my opponent had just kind of stepped away because that does happen a lot, but they do decide to Arven. And the one unfortunate part about the starting hand was the 2 switch cards. So they do kind of get the ultimate combo here. They bump the stadium. I get rid of the Drago with the energy. I think that makes the most sense, even though I am risking them knocking out my lone Drago. I don't know, I just didn't know what else to get rid of. And I also made the mistake of getting rid of the Pikachu. I wasn't fully thinking clearly. I didn't think it all the way through, I mean. They're not knocking anything out, so I needed to keep Pikachu on my bench so that I could have a way to keep my bench size large and put more Pokemon in play. So that was definitely a mistake. And I just used the Trekking Shoes and discard a Regi. And I think I grab an energy here to draw a couple of cards. I really wanted to find the Switch Cart and a way to get another energy, but I don't end up finding it yet. I guess I can Vessel. I think here I go a little too hard for this attack, and I kind of realized that after I play the Vessel, is I was going to get rid of the Regirock, but I can't keep getting rid of stuff. And I think as I say that, I choose to get rid of the Stretcher and just get into another Area 0. So things just kind of kept getting worse there. But now I do have a Greninja all built up. And at this point, I'm pretty confident that they do not play Manaphy, because I think that they would have gotten it down last turn. Like they picked a bunch of cards out of their deck, and ideally for them, they probably would have just benched 2 Dreepies as well as Manaphy and been guaranteed to have one next turn, because this still kind of puts them in a weird spot where they either need another Gust to knock out my Greninja, or like to candy both of their Dreepies into Dragapults, which is probably not going to happen. It's just very unlikely with this deck. With the Dragapult Dusknoir deck, it's kind of clunky. You don't have Pidgeot to grab cards. Yeah, so now, while I can't get all the Regis in play this turn more than likely, I can just promote Greninja and be guaranteed an attack at least. And now the prize map is kind of coming to fruition, and I see that I'm just going to knock out these 2 bench guys and use hopefully like Iron Bundle or Boss to bring up the Rotom and take that as the last 2 prizes, and just completely ignore this Dragapult. Or if they keep focusing down my like my Regigigases, like it seems like they're planning on, a lot of people do that when playing against Regis. They just focus down the Regigigas. Here it does make sense because they're just picking one of them, and they noticed that I had one in my discard pile, so they picked the Gigas to start focusing down. You know, I just bench it, which I'm not too sure how great of an idea that was. I probably should have just kept my hand the way it was. I was trying to play around Iono and get as many of the Regis in play as possible, as well as the stadium. Like, I know they're going to vacuum it, but I at least wanted to get one of them in play out of my hand, get rid of their vacuum so that next turn I can research and not just get rid of 2 stadiums. I would probably only get rid of 1 if I am able to keep the hand. So I was just kind of trying to play around as much as I could, and they do bring up my Gigas and knock it out. So I'm probably going to end up going for game this turn by promoting the Greninja, drawing a couple cards, benching the Pikachu, and researching. I think I do have a good amount of outs to basic Pokemon and whatever I would need in the deck. And all I need is a bundle and a Regice and a Regigigas. So I need a Stretcher and a ways to get 2 basic Pokemon. I do get the Stretcher right away, so this is kind of when I decided that I'm just going to go for it. I don't really want to give them another turn to either put down a 1 prize Pokemon on the bench or Iono my hand lower. Right now I have a chance, so I'm just going to wing it. And I look at the deck and see there's like Trekking Shoes, a couple Nest Balls, an Ultra Ball. There's like a good amount of things that I could draw. I also have like Switch Cart. If I could thin my hand out, I could retreat into the Regidrago and draw a couple cards with that. But I do end up just getting the Nest Ball and the Regice. I can bring up the Rotom and retreat to the Pikachu and take the last 2 prizes. My opponent gives me the thumbs up and just concedes. It forces me to do the animation anyway, but we end up winning that one. This game we are up against Terapagos. They started an Iron Bundle and I did pick to go first. I was picking to go first the whole time that I played this deck. And probably about half of the time that I was forced to go second, I was able to get a turn 1 attack. And I don't know what percentage it has to be to get the turn 1 attack to start choosing to go second, but I just didn't think it quite felt like enough of the time, so I just kept going first. Now here, I don't know, choosing whether or not to keep the stretchers at the beginning of the game can definitely be kind of rough, but yeah, I do end up keeping it and I just pass. I hold the Nest Ball. I don't know what they're playing, but I figure if I can top deck like another basic, just holding the Nest Ball increases the odds that I top deck the Pokemon. I don't want to play the stadium because I just didn't want them to bump it and me to waste my stadium for no reason. But now that I see what deck it is, I would have just played the stadium to get it out of my hand and kind of thin the deck a bit. I do top deck the Precious Trolley, which is pretty nice and kind of an insane top deck. Now I'm pretty glad that I kept the Nest Ball because it would be basically a waste if I couldn't get a Terra Pokemon in play to use the stadium. So I Nest Ball for the Pikachu, just like triple checking that I'm getting the right Regis so that I have all of them. And now we can I can grab whatever I want with the Cipher and Stretcher for an energy and draw it. So I can get Switch Cart and Luminous. Oh, I do end up, I think I end up getting the Switch Cart and the Luminous energy. Yeah, definitely. All right. Now here I make just probably the dumbest mistake in the world. I don't know why I got super tunnel visioned on like not attacking with Greninja for some reason. And I was trying to just like, in my head, the only options were Drago and Regice, and I chose Regice because I have one in my hand, but I should have just used Greninja. I realized it like right here. I'm just like, oh wow, well, nothing I can do about it now. And yeah, it definitely makes the game more interesting, and if I just Greninja'd both their Hoots, I think they would have bricked, and this game wouldn't be on, or in my video, so I guess it works out, and it does end up being an interesting game, so that's why I kind of kept it in there, because this does end up being a Terapagos deck that uses the second attack of the Terapagos, which can be definitely hard for Regis to deal with, especially with like the limited gust of the deck and stuff like that, because normally we would just like, if we had like 3 boss, we could just keep bossing and stuff like that, or like boss counter catcher and just be able to knock out the Terapagos. But since we don't, the only options are hit the bench with Greninja, Regieleki, or attack with the Regigigas. Now it is really hard in this deck to attack with the Gigas. We need to build up energy in play beforehand. Well, that's not really hard. That's not like too much to ask, but it is something we can do if we need to. Gigas just isn't the best attacker. It only does 150. It does 150 more if the opponent's active as a VMAX, but VMAXs aren't really a thing. So I do start building up the Gigas now because I know that's probably going to be what I have to do at some point, or I'm at least preparing for it. And I definitely want to get rid of that Eevee before it evolves to a Sylveon. And when we're like focusing down bench things like this with Greninja, we want to take out, like, if something can evolve and something like the Rotom is forced to stay 70 HP, the Eevee can evolve to like a 260 hit point Pokemon or whatever. So we want to focus down the Eevee before it gets out of Greninja range. And when it evolves, we can't hit it on the bench at all. So that's also a downside. Now here I'm just deciding what to promote, and it's obviously the Regieleki. I could have promoted the Gigas and start attacking with that, but I'm thinking that I'm going to target down the, what's it called? The Rotom with the skateboard on the bench probably. Knock that out, and at some point I can Iron Bundle. Oh no, I have to get Iron Bundle out of the prizes it looks like, but I can bundle up just something on the bench, and then one more Regieleki attack will win me the game, because obviously when I bundle, they're not going to send up a 2 prizers, they would just lose on the spot. Or I can even bundle boss. That can be something else that I go for, just with only the one boss. That's not like the most reliable plan in the world, but we do have several turns. As long as they don't gust this turn, we have at least 2 more turns to find a way to win the game. Because they can technically boss up my Squawkabilly, and if they play like a canceling clone or something weird like that, they could knock out the Pikachu and win in 2 turns, but they don't end up doing that. And oh, my bundle must be in the prizes, or in the discard pile, I mean. I thought it was prize for some reason. Here, I'm really struggling whether or not to take the Drago. This is a weird turn, and I'm like, I might be forced to leave the Drago in the active, so I end up taking the other one just so I have access to it in my deck. And I was debating if I should Stretcher for another Pokemon first or draw, and I decided to draw because then I can Stretcher for an energy and draw 2 more cards with Greninja. And I figured that's like the way that I could draw the most cards is yeah, to draw a Drago first and then Stretcher for energy and get Greninja. But we do end up drawing right into the Iron Bundle, so I just use that and attack with the Drago. And now it's basically like, if they don't disrupt my hand, I just win. I don't think that they would play a way to remove the stadium, because I'm sure that they play the stadium of their own, and they don't. I'm just reading the Noctowl to make sure it doesn't have any weird like bench barrier ability. And yeah, they just concede because I can just bench the Drago that they know is in my hand and snipe the bench with the Regieleki. Alright, now this is just a quick donk example for sequencing purposes. Now my opponent goes first, just passes, and this hand is kind of weird. I am pretty close to a donk. I just need a few cards. Like I need Vessel, Trolley, and the Stadium, and I also need access to a Switch or a Luminous Energy. That is why I just can't play the Cipher right away. So I decide to first get the Greninja, because I can draw a couple cards with it. And I can always thin my hand down with this Ultra Ball to draw off the Drago to get access to cards from Cipher. But I do draw into a Research and Trekking Shoes. And now I can Ultra Ball and grab the Pikachu to open up the Stadium in case I draw more Regis off of the Drago or something like that. And then I plan to Research, and I can use Squawk on the other side if I need to. So I Ultra Ball here. I'm going to bench all the Pokemon out of my hand and draw 3. This is the most I'm going to be able to draw off Drago more than likely. And we do draw the Trolley. So that is going to be enough to just get the knockout with the Cipher. Because I can just grab Luminous Energy and Vessel off the Cipher and use Squawk to draw the cards. Of course, had I known that I was going to draw the Precious Trolley off of the Drago ability, I would have discarded the Research instead of the Ciphermaniac, but we drew it after and it still ends up working out. That's kind of a good example of doing the random actions before the sure actions. If you need like a 4-card combo, you could get 2 of the cards out of the deck you want to draw all the cards that you possibly can before choosing the 2 specific cards, because when you need the 4 cards, it's much higher chance to draw any one of the 4 cards. And if you pick 2 of the cards out of the deck beforehand, you're like cutting down the odds by half, because now there's only 2 cards that you can draw to get to the combo. This is most often the best way to go about things when looking for a combo. Examples of the other order we would want to do things is in Miraidon, you want to do the sure actions before random a lot of the time with like generators. We would want to grab all the Pokemon we can out of the deck and play the Arven and whatever first before the generator, because pulling non-lightning energy cards out of the deck increases the odds that we hit lightning energy off of generator. This can also be true in Arven decks. Like if you're looking for a non-item or tool and you have Arven in your hand, you just want to play the Arven to pull those cards out of the deck and then use the draw. But it can also be flipped the opposite way. If we're looking for 2 items, we would use the draw before the Arven, because if we get one of them, we can Arven for the other one. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Alright, so there is no guaranteed attack in this hand, but there is a best way to play it out. Just take a second and think, how would you play this hand out? First, we would Vessel away the Stretcher, grab the energy that fit whatever attacker we want to use, Ultra Ball those energy away, then grab Greninja or just one of the Regis. Picking the Regi does matter based on what's prized and how many heavy balls are in the deck and such, but so just Ultra Ball for a Pokemon, bench all the Pokemon, draw with Drago, and then research. You probably have pretty good odds of hitting an attack. And with the whole Regis being prized thing, since this deck does play 2 heavy ball, if we prize one of the Regis and have both heavy balls in the deck, we want to not grab that Regi and leave heavy balls as an extra out to get into it. So we would just grab the non-prized Regi in a situation like that. This hand does have a guaranteed attack. Just assume nothing is prized and think about how you would play the hand out to get that attack. Well, I would start with Vesseling away the lightning energy and then check, and once you see that everything is in the deck that you need, you can grab the energy that correspond with the attacker you want to use. So let's pretend we want to attack with Greninja. We would just grab both of the water energy. Then we would Nest Ball for the Greninja, play the Cipher, grab Pikachu and Precious Trolley, Greninja away one of the water energies, bench the Pikachu, play the Stadium, play the Precious Trolley, get all the Pokemon. We can even get Squawk and draw a new hand after that. And then we would switch into the Greninja, either Squawk away the water energy, or if you don't get Squawk, just hand attach the water to the Greninja, accelerate with the Regigigas, and attack. So I do think that this deck is pretty solid. Whether it needs to be built a little bit differently or not, I am still trying to figure out. But I know I ordered the cards for this deck already, but I am looking for any excuse to play Regis at this point. I miss when that deck was really good, so I might be a little bit biased. Yeah, overall it seems solid. Just being able to use Greninja over and over again, having so much snipe combined with being able to take big one-shots is pretty powerful. The only real question about it is the consistency. I know I'm going to try a couple different things. I'm going to try a more supporter heavy build with just raw draw, like more Ionos and researches, and like see if maybe switching the shoes for an extra research or Iono or something like that will help. Definitely going to be trying a few things. I think this deck is really cool and has a lot of options. It's cool to see even this late in a format that there's still so many things to be figured out. I know new sets keep coming out, but we're getting close to rotation. You figure there'd be really dominant decks at this point, but just these random decks keep doing well, which I think is definitely pretty cool. Some other cards to think about in the deck are stuff like the Terapagos EX and the Latias EX. Terapagos, we would be able to use its second attack and it would be an extra Terra Pokemon. I think if I really wanted to run that, I would cut one of the Pikachus. The reason that I didn't put it in there is because I think the only matchups that the second attack of Terapagos is good in is matchups that we're already pretty favored in as being a one prize deck like this. The reason the Latias isn't in here is just bench space. We can only afford to have 3 extra Pokemon down, and with Greninja, Squawkabilly, and Pikachu, all that we can bench past that are the Regis. So it does get kind of tough on bench space, and those are often Pokemon that we're going to want to have down in almost every matchup. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you think about this little bit different style of video, and like or dislike, comment, and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.